Hey, welcome to CineCringe. My name is George, and with me is Chris. We believe in pain. We believe in death.
What have you done, Max? What has Max Payne done?
Today we're looking at 2008's Max Payne, based on the fantastic first game, really. I think this movie is really only based on the first game. It has not broken the trend of bad video game to movie adaptations.
It's a shame because if you look at the images, you would expect it to have been the one that broke all the trends. I don't remember the trailer for this movie, but it must have been awesome because there are so many genuinely cool and also Max Payne-y images in this movie. It's just the movie itself around them is well, it's the least interesting movie mystery of all time.
What do you say we grab a beer after work or something?
Maxie Max is a cop who's sad because his family was murdered. He runs around for like 50 minutes seeing vials of strange drugs and tattoos of wings on various people. And every time he sees tattoos of wings, he's like, could these be connected somehow? And then, like 55 minutes in, he punches Chris O'Donnell in the face a couple times, and O'Donnell just reveals the entire thing. He explains it's a drug company conspiracy, which is basically that movie Jacob's Ladder with Tim Robbins, except stupid. And also Maxie Max's wife worked on the drug, but she found evidence of wrongdoing, so they killed her. And then Max shoots random people for like half an hour, including his wife's killer, and that's the end.
What you described, if I recall correctly, it pretty much is what the first game's story is.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
It's actually pretty faithful, which is, it's one of those complaints that happens a lot with the game to movie adaptations, that they're not faithful to the source material, and then people blame that as like why the movie failed, like for example with Assassin's Creed. But the problem with this one is actually the other way around, I think, because the game was released in 2001, I think? And as a game from that era, the story's pretty thin. Because the game itself is only like 12 hours long. The thing is, for a game, you have the player input. You go through the entire journey of fighting and shooting and killing and defeating hard bosses and so on and so forth. So even with a flimsy or thin story, you feel rewarded. But when you take out that player input, all you have is the thin story.
That's right.
And none of the coolness of the game.
If the gameplay is 12 hours, like 11 and a half of that hours is just you jumping sideways in slow motion and shooting people full of bullets.
And the other part is they lost a lot of the feel, the vibe of the game in its dialogue, in its performance, and in the visuals. They recreated some of the scenes from the game, but it's not consistent. The rest of it just looks like this. It looks like a, low budget Departed.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. It totally does.
And it's just like it feels like a cheesy cop drama.
Yeah, they really didn't manage to import the elevated reality of the games, and it was the elevated reality of the games that made all the other stuff work. We start with the flash forward. He's drowning and he bursts out of the water, and it's super intense and whatever. And I just instantly in the first shot, the thing about Marky Mark is that he is Marky Mark, and you can't take him seriously. Yeah. You can take him seriously in real world settings, like where he's played, where he's cast in a real world role, and you could kind of see just he's this doofy kind of guy that is a real grounded portrayal of a certain kind of person that you know. The thing about Wahlberg is that he doesn't seem real when he has to inhabit a genre type, because he's just too much of a jock, and it feels like when you watch him act, you're just kind of watching him when the class jock runs for high school president and everyone votes for him because they're just
exactly.
Yeah, we like that guy. You just try to watch him act like a tough detective or like an immortal swordsman or whatever stupid thing he's doing, and you just clap because you like him, the person, and he's a good guy basically, and you can see why all the cheerleaders like him or whatever. But he can't ground a movie like this, and that's what this needs. It's Harrison Ford or Daniel Kaluuya or Angelina Jolie. All these people, there are all these actors out there that can be in a silly movie, but then they have a real feeling I don't know if you've seen it, but he's still the guy from that workout video where he keeps going, pow! He's like, he's that guy. He's still Marky Mark. You can't not see it.
Yo, homie, that's a really nice watch. Kind of reminds me of one I lost.
I was just super confused by this setup, like who these bad guys are. Like, as they're introduced to us, they're just trying to, I guess, mug random guys in train station bathrooms. So they're not like these high-end criminals. But then, after correctly guessing that Max Payne is a cop, the guy, instead of running away, chooses to straight up, like, draw a gun and point it at a police officer. But I found that all of this, like, led into a huge problem, which is that this is supposed to be the, like, Max Payne heroic introduction.
Yeah.
But he's just, like, whooping the asses of these, like, random muggers who are in way over their heads. In order for this sequence to work, we need to initially be scared of the bad guys, because the whole idea is that, like, we watch them and we feel that if we were in this situation in real life, we would be totally screwed and we would cower in fear and we'd give them our watch and whatever. And then, so then the movie fantasy part is like, oh, what if I was Marky Mark instead? And then I was just like super tough and then I would beat them up. And then as the viewer, you feel empowered because you see like your avatar, the protagonist, triumph over these guys that have scared you. But this just like, this kind of just felt like Max Payne, like picking on losers, like the jocks beating up the nerds or something. Like, it's supposed to feel like Jason Statham kicking the carjackers' asses in Transporter 2, but it kind of feels like Christian Bale killing a homeless person. Like in American Psycho, I mean, not like just Christian Bale.
This is Daly. You can't keep following me around. That's not. Mind your own business.
Let's talk about Mona Sax.
Sure.
Does she scream femme fatale to you?
Oh god, I was just so sad for everyone in this movie. Like, I had initially written down for Olga Kurylenko, I was like, man, this is a really thankless role. And then along comes Mila Kunis, and I was like, oh god.
Mila Kunis here, first of all, she's miscasted. Well, she still feels like Jackie from that 70s show. She just feels like a teenager in her goth phase.
Sure.
Yeah, she's in the fuck you daddy phase.
Like Mark Wahlberg, also just feels like she's playing dress up a little bit in the noir thing. Like, both of them are actors who just don't really seem like they fit in their clothes or their costumes or their characters. They just, you're just watching them do the thing, and you like them, and they're charismatic, and they're unique looking, and they're fun to watch. So all of that happens. But when you see them doing these scenes that are built on, like, 80 whatever years of movie history, you're like, no, that's not quite the same as Humphrey Bogart. Like,
she doesn't feel like she's in charge.
I agree with that.
This feels like an actual crime boss sending 3 guards with her daughter, with his daughter, to go out.
Yeah.
She just looks like a petulant teenager who has rich parents and hire bodyguards. Oh, and that reminds me, if you like this video and you want to hear the entire uncut 90-minute long podcast version, go check out our Patreon. Links down below in the description. Anyways.
I think it's like Mark Wahlberg is not like a sad guy in life, right? Like, I don't know. I know nothing about him. Maybe he's sad because of his hate crimes. But just throw that in and move on. He feels like just like a generally like happy, plucky guy. And when he's in movies where he's a happy, plucky guy, it always works. And I feel like the great noir actors, usually when you read into their lives, they were just like bitter, sad alcoholics who could never find solace in anything and like didn't appreciate their fame and et cetera, et cetera. And that's what was being captured while they were acting these detectives out. And that's why they were appealing, because that's what those detective characters are like. They're typically able to solve the crime, but it's because they understand the dark side of humanity, because they've seen it so much and because they see it in themselves. And they live essentially a terrible existence. And I feel like that does not jive with Mark Wahlberg. I think he lives a pretty good existence.
Now, I also want to talk about these flashes in red.
Right.
Is that the movie's attempt to reference taking damage in the game? Or is it a way to disguise and get the PG-13 rating? So if this is strictly to reference the game, why of all things this? Because that's not the thing that the game is famous for. That's not what the fans remember. Is it just because the bullet time is too similar to Matrix, and the Matrix, just concluded around this time, so it's like overdone.
And it's not really revisited as a visual
it doesn't
concept. It just kind of happens here.
Maybe the coverage they shot for that scene just didn't work out, so they're like, okay, well, how do we cut it together?
It could be that this really just, it feels like a movie where things did not quite go right.
I want to give this movie one little credit for this shot coming up. It is probably, of all the bad movies we've done on this channel so far, I think this is like the coolest imagery.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like just a ripoff of a cool thing from other movies. It feels like a cool image that they thought of, and it would only be in this movie.
It conveyed quite a lot. It's visually stunning, but it also conveyed the fact that, okay, he really just fell out of a window, but from that guy's point of view, this is what it felt like, that he was being pulled out by like this dark Valkyrie, right? Which means, like, and I was like, well, why didn't you do this at the beginning? Like, with all the other sequences leading up to this, why couldn't you have done the exact same thing? Because, like, when Olga's character, Natasha, was dying in the alleyway, it just straight up looked like she was just attacked by actual demons.
Yes.
Like, it became supernatural.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't have a real-world justification for why she's seeing that.
Yeah, I really struggle with this, because like you say, it's one of the coolest things in the movie. It's the moment... It's an important moment in the movie because it definitively reveals that there is not something supernatural going on, that this is a visual metaphor. The thing that I guess becomes awkward at this point is, like, once we're certain that it is a visual metaphor, the story becomes even way less interesting. Because you're like, oh, I really have just been watching people, like, drop dead. That's the plot. Yeah. People just die. A drug is poisoning people. That's the mystery. It's simultaneously cool and also reveals just how boring the movie is.
Tell me what happened to Michelle.
I don't know.
Mr. Colvin, are you okay?
Jackie!
Mr. Colvin, it's Jackie. I can hear you.
So, yeah, an hour in, the entire plot is revealed. This is the only guy he needed to talk to. He didn't need to do anything else that he did for the entire movie. He just needed to come punch Chris O'Donnell. And he met Chris O'Donnell in the start, so he could have started punching him anytime. Yeah, and then again, we just reveal this drug that makes no sense. Like, he says it makes you aggressive, which makes you invincible. I'm not sure how that happens. Like, are those two things related? Like, I guess, like, best case scenario I can imagine is someone, like, raging on angel dust, which I guess does make you dangerous, but not, like, a good soldier.
Yeah, and also, like, those drugs already exist.
Yeah.
Why do we need another one? That, like, has way worse side effects. He's not interrogating him with any information that he's earned in the last 50 minutes.
No.
So...
No. This could have been the first...
thing. He could have just started with this. It's not like he didn't even, like, learn in the last 50 minutes that, oh, this guy is, like, easily broken. Like, if you just, like, hurt him a bit, he'll just tell you everything. There isn't even a scene about that. So he really could have just done this right at the beginning.
I couldn't believe my eyes when the mystery was being revealed. Not that I didn't know what the mystery was, but just that I was like, why did you make me watch the last hour then?
When we finally get to the big action scene, I was so disappointed. Not only did they not utilize the one famous thing, the game, the game that this is based on, with a slow dive bullet time, and instead choosing to film the shootout sequence in, like, the most generic way possible, and they did it terribly. There was no sense of direction, of body count, of who's who. It was just like everybody just standing there throwing bullets in a vague direction that never hits anybody. And we're also back to the infinite bullet trope.
Yes, yeah. I'm glad you said disappointed, because I wrote down, when we started the scene, I felt like the parent who's, like, not mad at you, they're just disappointed in what you've done. And that was how I felt. Like, I'm so glad I did not go see this movie in theater, because this would have just crushed my heart if I was sitting there and 60 minutes in, I was like, this is the big budget theatrical release Max Payne action sequence that I waited an hour for. There are one or two cool images which are just directly and unashamedly stolen from John Woo movies, which makes perfect sense because Max Payne is directly and unashamedly stolen from John Woo movies. Like, they're not even good versions of the John Woo things that they're stealing. Like, John Woo stole it from himself, the like, running down the windows, the wall of windows and shooting sideways. He stole it from himself when he did Hard Target with Van Damme in the States, after he had done it in Hard Boiled. But it's not even a good version in this one. There is literally a better Mark Wahlberg movie with better Max Payne-like scenes, which is the 1998 movie The Corruptor, which stars Chow Yun-fat, the guy who stars in all the movies that Max Payne stole everything from.
The end of the film ends similarly to the game's ending, which is at the rooftop, but the voiceover for the ending is significantly lamer. In the game, after you slaughtered everybody and reached the rooftop, Max says,
"They were all dead." The final gunshot was an exclamation mark to everything that had led to this point. I released my finger from the trigger.
It's like the game's telling the player, it's all right, you can relax now. Literally release your finger from the controller trigger. Right? In this movie, the exact same scene, instead he says,
"I don't know about heaven, but I do believe in angels."
The only thing it needed was the Sarah McLachlan then.
Yeah.
In the arms of the angel.
Okay, you wanna do the segment of
Yes.
how to minimize the pain felt in Max Payne?
The most interesting element from the games that you kind of touched on is that Max Payne is really like torn up psychologically, and he's really struggling with like what happened and reconstructing these memories, and you keep seeing like glimpses of it and you don't really know what went down with the murder. So my pitch is to go like 1000% darker. I'm taking inspiration from Euripides here, Heracles Gone Mad. My pitch is that the final reveal is that I think the baby would be too far, but that Max himself has been affected by this drug in like a Jacob's Ladder type scenario, and that Max was actually the one who killed his own wife. That's the final reveal I wanted. What I would have done is made this a much more psychological thriller style movie where you never really feel like you can trust Max's point of view. I think because this movie was so generic and light and corny, it made me want it to have something that just went like super hard and unpleasant, because the games are just badass. They're just like, they're hard ass games, and it's felt so sad to watch this movie.
Yeah, that wraps it up for this week with Max Payne, the game to movie disappointment. Next week we are doing a easy movie. No chance of controversy. No chance of anything problematic. It is the 2014 Christian film God's Not Dead,
starring Hercules himself, Mr. Kevin Sorbo.
I can't wait to see all the downvotes. We'll see everybody next week. Remember to like and subscribe, and that's it. We're done.
What have you done, Max? What has Max Payne done?